So Emerald Fennell's incredibly divisive interpretation, you can't really call it an adaptation, on the 1847 novel Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte has finally been released this Valentine's weekend, and the controversy has not even slightly stopped. If anything, it's got even more divisive and controversial, which is hilarious. I'm going to get into spoilers in this video, so if you haven't seen it yet, come back to this video when you have, and if you have, let me know what you thought in the comments. Did you appreciate the boldness, or did the distance from the source material let you down? Getting into things then, I really wasn't following the discourse surrounding this movie in any way, shape or form, despite being incredibly excited for its release. I'm actually a really big fan of Saltburn, though I haven't watched it since release. I remember how fresh and unique the movie was, and I hadn't really seen such a bold movie really ever. I was quite new to my film watching journey, and I really appreciated how unique it was and how far it went with literally everything it tried to do. Maybe if I watched it now I wouldn't feel the same way, but I have fond memories of it. It definitely had some problems though, even at the time, but it was still a very good film. And then Promising Young Woman I watched about 2 weeks ago in preparation of this movie, and that one really delivered for me too. I really didn't like the ending, so the last 15 minutes does really let the movie down. But as a whole, I had a great time, and again, found myself incredibly engaged with the style of Fennell. A style that is very distinctive, despite the fact she's only made 2 movies. And the atmosphere she creates and the modern influence is really engaging in both of them. And I think it's present in Wuthering Heights too, of course, it's her film, which is why I wanted to mention it. And I also think it's worth mentioning that Fennell is, to an extent, still finding her feet in her work, and it's very interesting watching it progress. Anyway, after actually watching the movie, I've spent a decent amount of time researching and following the general movie discourse, but also going deeper into the original novel and other adaptations. I can really understand the backlash now, and it's hard to argue that it isn't justified, to be perfectly honest, because this adaptation completely misses the entire point of the book and makes a few decisions that are really just bad. I really need to say that I genuinely had zero knowledge whatsoever in, again, any way, shape or form regarding the book while actually watching the movie. So when watching, I thought things kind of worked, and you know, now after seeing the themes the book actually explores and the way it tackles complex and meaningful topics, not just forbidden love, it's not even really exclusively a love story. I mean, it's just not really exclusively a love story. And the fact they cut out entire parts with their children, for example, it really just makes me wonder why this isn't just an original movie, because there's clearly something there. But the fact that it attaches itself to the novel, and the fact that it only follows it very loosely, you know, only sort of the names of the things, they're kind of the only things that actually stuck. Okay, not to that extent, but I can see why people feel that way, and it poses a much more interesting question about modern adaptations and how much liberty should be taken and how far you should stray away from the source. And I can appreciate and respect Fennell taking a risk with this movie, but even the overarching messages and themes of class and revenge are done in a way that is almost a joke, and as a result, there isn't really a good reason why this deserves to bear the name Wuthering Heights. All the revenge stuff that starts nearer the end of the movie is presented in such an odd way, and it's almost played as a joke, like that scene where Heathcliff says he's never going to love Isabella and treat her terribly, etc, etc, and then the dog and the bark and stuff. I mean, what's there really to say about that? It fits with the theme of the movie, but from what I understand, it really disrespects the original novel. And I guess that's probably the best way to describe this entire movie, actually. There's clearly things that deserve praise, I'm not going to deny that, but it's just a really, really bad adaptation. But it's not even because it's a modern interpretation, ignoring all the admittedly amazing but out of place costumes and music. It just misses the entire point of the novel, which is very rare for adaptations, because most understand what they're trying to say to some extent, whereas this movie just doesn't really do that at all. It really doesn't know where it stands at times. A good example is Romeo and Juliet 1996. It's a really modern adaptation at the time. It takes numerous creative liberties. It's not the best movie by any means, but as an adaptation it works pretty well because the overarching story and idea is still very present. Admittedly, it's a bit easier with Romeo and Juliet, but it's not really an excuse. Just very quickly then, I want to go into a bit more detail about the novel to really understand why this movie doesn't work as well as it could have. In the novel, Kathy has a brother called Hindley who feels betrayed by his and Kathy's father, who's really accepting and welcoming of Heathcliff, and as a result treats him incredibly poorly. They all see him as less than them anyway, and in the book Heathcliff isn't white either, which is a really important part of the character and is why Jacob Elordi's casting caused so much controversy. And then the father dies in the book, he gets treated even worse by the brother. Kathy says marrying him would degrade her, just like in the film. He leaves and gets rich, we don't know how. She gets married to Edgar Linton, just again like in the film. So of course there are things that actually do happen. But anyway, Heathcliff marries Isabella to make her jealous, starts treating her, Hindley and just everyone really terribly, and one by one seeking revenge due to him not being with Cathy. And then when there's a next generation involved, all the three couples that I've mentioned have children, Hindley and his wife, Cathy and Edgar, Heathcliff and Isabella, and the trauma and abuse carries on through the two generations. And it's, in a way, it's all tied together by Cathy and Heathcliff not being able to be together. So there's clearly love there, but in the novel they only kiss once and they never have any sexual interactions, unlike the movie. So I know that is a super brief and not very good explanation off the top of my head, but after learning and understanding that, the whole message of the book is really, really missed in the movie, which aims to shock, but at times doesn't go far enough anyway. The marketing kept reiterating how this is the greatest love story of all time, and even in that literal minute explanation I've just given, I don't think anyone can interpret that story as being the greatest love story of all time, or even really just a love story. So, things are played as jokes, characters are completely different, ages are changed. So in terms of Wuthering Heights adaptation, again, this movie really misses the mark. There's no sugarcoating that. But at the same time, I would be lying if I said it's a bad movie, because I really don't think that it is. I had a really solid time, and my screening definitely had a solid time with all the laughing and giddiness I was hearing. The performances are pretty solid. There definitely is some chemistry there. I don't know why people are saying there's not. I think a lot of people just want to hate on this film, which I guess is fair enough if that's what they think. But also, again, not liked by some, but the outfits are absolutely amazing. The soundtrack is really great. It gives the movie such an unmatched, nice feel. The cinematography is very good. It's a very well-made film, as expected. We were all expecting it to be, and it is. There's no denying that. It's also, of course, very colourful and stunning to look at. And ultimately, it's a breath of fresh air. And again, as much as it really didn't reach its full potential, the attempt to create something like this does deserve some praise, in my opinion. I do think the ending was a bit mismanaged, and I didn't really feel too emotional despite the drawn-out build-up. And again, I think it just boils down to the fact that the ideas aren't really explored in enough detail. So when the movie does try to stay loyal to the source material, it kind of feels misplaced because the rest of it ignores it so much. I don't really have much more to say, to be perfectly honest, but I've just found this entire episode so incredibly interesting, I just had to talk about it in some detail. I still like Emerald Fennell as a filmmaker, but I can also really understand the all style, no substance criticism that she constantly receives, and this movie definitely isn't going to convince anyone that isn't true. I just feel it was a real missed opportunity though, because all the elements are there to have crafted something really unique, memorable, and very good. But the fact that it attaches itself to such an iconic book and then proceeds to completely ignore all the staple ideas and messages of said book, it almost feels as if the aim was to alienate every group that would be likely to watch it, which is a choice. And I really think this movie wouldn't be getting even half the amount of hate it's getting if it was an original thing. But the fact it isn't is ultimately the movie's downfall in pretty much every way. Because people who have no knowledge of the original novel will likely be confused and almost misled by the movie, as it leaves out so many key parts that makes things feel empty at times, and those who are familiar with the novel are just going to feel stabbed in the back by how poor of an adaptation it is. To conclude then, I would say it's definitely worth a watch. It isn't a bad movie by any means, and I always encourage people to watch and form their own opinions anyway, but especially for such a divisive movie because it's actually pretty fun. But most will understand why this movie is so controversial, and while it could result in strong box office results, I really hope wrong lessons aren't learnt from this movie, if it does end up being a major success. I'm looking forward to Fennell's next movie, though I really hope it's not another adaptation.